In today's video, we're going to go over who I think are the top 5 best value NHL free agent signings for 2018 so far. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. As I mentioned off the top, today I'm going to tell you who I think are the top 5 best value free agent signings that we've seen so far during the NHL free agent period here and during the 2018 offseason since July the 1st. Now, we've seen all kinds of players change teams, some players re-sign with their existing teams, and there's been all kinds of signings, some good, some bad, some kind of mediocre. So I've kind of gone through here and kind of pinpointed who I think are the top 5 best and the top 5 worst signings. So today we're going to go over who I think are the top 5 best value best signings here overall, and then tomorrow you're going to get a video from me discussing who I think were the top 5 worst free agent contract signings so far during the free agent period here. Let's jump in. Now, the first one we're going to give to you right off the top is the absolute best signing here is John Tavares. Obviously, the Maple Leafs won free agency. In yesterday's video, we did a video discussing who are the top winners and top losing teams during the NHL free agents period so far. Obviously, I indicated that I felt the Leafs were the big winners. Landing the big fish, really getting John Tavares on their team is really a huge move for that franchise. They were already a strong team, and that just made them that much stronger. So obviously, I felt the Leafs as a team won, but I think this is really the best contract that we've seen handed out during the free agent period. I really like this contract for John Tavares. He's still fairly young. He's 27 years old. He's still in his prime. You throw Tavares into the mix here in that top 6 with the Leafs, and it looks pretty lethal. You've got Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Patrick Marleau. You throw in John Tavares. You get Zach Hyman, normally plays up there. I mean, they got a pretty lethal top 6. And now they've got Tavares, Matthews, and Kadri 1, 2, 3 down the middle as well. So it doesn't matter if you kind of say Tavares is number 1, Matthews is number 1. It really doesn't matter. They're like a 1A, 1B. They basically are going to have the equivalent here, the 2 top lines, and their number 3 line would be a number 1 line on some teams or a number 2 line on most teams. So really, like, they have a pretty potent top 6, and even really you could even include the top 9. I think they're going to be a very, very strong forward group. They were already strong as it was coming off the strong year that they just completed. You throw him in the mix, and it's just that much better. So I think it's a great fit for the team. I think that, getting him at a 7-year deal, $11 million based on what other top free agents have obtained here recently, I think is a fair contract as well. He left money on the table. It was speculated that the Islanders offered him the 8-year deal at the same amount of money, so he could have had 1 extra year. So obviously he turned that down for not just for money reasons, but for other reasons as well. And it was reported, I can't confirm 100%, but it was being reported, and this came from Elliot Friedman, so I trust the reliability, that the Sharks offered him $13 million over 7 years. So obviously, John Tavares didn't take this contract because it was all about money. This is where he wants to play. It's his hometown team. Plus, they're in an excellent position that he thinks to win. And really, based on what they have for players, you can't help but agree with them that their window here is long and wide open for some chance to really contend here for some Stanley Cups for many years to come. So obviously, John Tavares and the Leafs, the big winners here. I like the contract. I like the fit. By far the best deal of the offseason so far for free agent period. Now, the next couple ones we're going to talk about is a couple of goaltenders. Now, obviously, there wasn't really a lot of high-profile goaltenders coming up for free agency this year. A lot of these goaltenders that were up in free agency this year were kind of considered backups or at some point in time had been a starter in their career. But I really like the signing of Carter Hutton with the Buffalo Sabres. I know he's been a career backup goaltender between his time in Nashville and in St. Louis, but he's been a very solid backup, a very serviceable backup. When the starting goaltenders that he's been paired with in both of his tenures, really, if you look at it, he had a solid year in Nashville when he played more than an average backup. And then last year as well in St. Louis, he played more than an average backup as well. He really played his way into more of a 1A, 1B scenario with Jake Allen. He's really stepped up and really played well when it mattered most. So he's more than a serviceable backup. He certainly deserves a shot at being a starting goaltender. He's a little bit older. He's a little bit of a late bloomer at 32 years of age. But the contract they gave him at 3 years at $2.75 million, really, overall, I like that contract. I mean, the contract will be up when he's around 35 years of age, which is not unreasonable. If you look at the money he's getting at 2.75, that's really not much more than what a lot of the really good backup goaltenders make in the NHL. We've seen many backup goaltenders signing deals between $2.5 million. So it's very reasonable in that sense. If at some point during those 3 years He proves unable to be a steady top starting goaltender who can play 50, 60 games, and they have to bring in another guy. They're not really strapped to the cap with a big contract on their goaltending side. Plus, they have a youngster coming up in Allmark who should be able to help kind of relieve some of that pressure anyways, and as he continues to learn and develop into hopefully being a starting goaltender down the road. So that should work well for the Sabres. It's kind of like a stopgap contract for a couple of years while Allmark continues to develop to hopefully be that guy down the road. So I really like this contract for the team. I really like this contract for the player. Gives them a chance to shine, but it doesn't handicap the team here into being in really bad cap situation due to a bad, big money contract on a guy that didn't work out. I think it's a pretty low risk deal with a potential high reward. So I really like that deal for the player and for the Buffalo Sabres. Now, the other goaltender that I really liked coming out of free agency here the most was the deal sending Robin Lehner to the New York Islanders on a 1-year, kind of like that show me contract at $1.5 million. Robin Lehner, I think, probably has, out of all the goaltenders that were free agents this past summer here, probably one of the bigger upsides. Now, he has had trouble being consistent throughout his career, but I still think he has a lot of potential, and he's still young enough. Like, you got to remember, a lot of goaltenders don't really get into being regulars into the NHL until they're at least 22, a lot of them 23, 24 years of age. Goalies are a different kind of player. They develop differently, and they do take longer before they usually are legitimate, consistent NHL players. So at this point in his career, but he was one of those guys that really started much earlier. I mean, the Senators had him in their backup position when he was really young. He's been in the league a while considering his age. So I think he could still be at a position where he could still develop into a long-term starting goaltender. Not to say it's going to happen, but I think the potential is there. He's only 1 year to prove himself with the Islanders, only $1.5 million. So it's low risk from the term, it's low risk from the money side, but it has that potential high reward that if he can develop into that starting goaltender that a lot of people have thought he could over the last number of years here. And really, if you look at his time in Ottawa and Buffalo, like the numbers, they were not that terrible. Like, they were not necessarily, great starting goaltender numbers, but he's been on some bad teams too. Like, you got to remember that. With his time with Buffalo, I mean, he didn't have a strong team in front of him, and during his time with Ottawa, they were, inconsistent too. Like, they had like a good year, bad year, good year, bad year. He hasn't really had consistent run support in front of him the whole time. So, not to say that the Islanders are going to provide that, but obviously they're in a different position now after everything that we just talked about, especially with losing Tavares that we just mentioned here. So obviously the Islanders are in a different position, but I like the fact that they gave him the low-risk deal, and I think he can prove himself here to still be a serviceable NHL goaltender and have a shot at kind of proving the critics wrong. Now, one of the other signings here that I really liked, and I know some of you may disagree with this, they might think it's too much money or too long-term, but really for me, the real deal, James Neal going to the Calgary Flames, I think is a terrific fit. James Neal has been a player who's always produced. He's been very consistent. I know he's one of those guys that seems to have a lot of people seem to like him, but there's still a fair bit that kind of dislike him as well. But for me, I think he's a good fit with the Calgary Flames. If you look at that top 6 group, between obviously Monahan and Gaudreau were relied upon way too much. They've had trouble getting Sam Bennett to develop into a second-line player, which they had hoped for. You throw in Matthew Tkachuk, who's been pretty good. They traded out Ferland and Dougie Hamilton to the Hurricanes. They bring back Elias Lindholm, so hopefully Lindholm can work out within that top 6 group as well. You throw in a guy like James Neal, and this kind of gives that veteran presence with that that reliability. Like, you pretty well should be able to bank on James Neal scoring at least 20 goals for sure. I would think probably more likely 25 to 30, playing with some good, strong players. I mean, we saw what he did with the Vegas Golden Knights this year. He was a leader on that team. He put up some pretty decent numbers. Even though he missed a fair bit of time with some injury, he still put up solid numbers. I think he'll be a good fit in Calgary myself. And if you look around what some of the other players, what they were able to get on free agency, like if you compare him to, like, let's say, to a James Van Riemsdyk, who gets $7 million per year, yes, you could argue that Van Riemsdyk scored a little bit more. He's a little bit younger, but really, if you look at how the two players play and what they bring to the team, I like the fact, if you look at the difference in comparisons here, like he's about $1.25 million below what a James Van Riemsdyk costs, but I think you're going to get very similar production. And Van Riemsdyk, you can say what you want about him. He's a great scorer. He's been proven to be a good power play guy. He's good around the net. In close, he's got really great hands, but he's a defensive liability. He's not a great skater. There's certainly some knocks on him as well, and he's a $7 million player. So if you compare the two that way, I think that the James Neal contract's a little, quite fair. When that contract is up, he'll still be 35, 36 years of age. If he can keep producing, even at a 20-goal level here into the back half of that contract, then it'll prove to be a good contract here for the Calgary Flames longer term. So I like the fit. I like the team. I really think he'll be a good add for that Flames to hopefully get them back into the playoff mix here into this coming season. The last player we're going to talk about here is Tobias Rieder, who was signed by the Edmonton Oilers. Now, obviously, Rieder's a player that started with the Arizona Coyotes. I'm not really sure what happened there, why he kind of fell out of favor and was shipped off to LA. If you look at his numbers during his first 3 or 4 years in the NHL, he was slowly kind of building up his stats. Like, he was getting a little bit better each year, at least statistically. Now, because of where he was playing in Arizona, he's not a player I've gotten a chance to watch a whole lot. I'm on the East Coast. He was playing in the West, so it didn't seem quite as much as I would have liked here to kind of give a better analysis on him. But based on what I've seen of him and the highlights I've watched, as well as looking at through his stats, like, he was statistically improving year over year for the most part with the Coyotes. He didn't really fit that well in LA, but I really like this signing by the Edmonton Oilers. I think he could be a good fit. Now, if you don't know, he's of German descent, obviously. And who else is from German descent? Well, one of the top guys on the Edmonton Oilers, Leon Draisaitl. Now, these guys are familiar with each other. They've had a chance to play with each other before during international competitions. And I think Rieder at 1 year at $2 million, I mean, it's hard to say where he's going to end up playing, but I'm sure that if they're likely at least going to give him an opportunity. Whether or not he does well with it and it sticks, it's hard to say. But I'm sure he'll be given an opportunity to play with Leon. He could be proved to be a very solid winger for him. I mean, obviously, at times here, you're probably going to see McDavid and Draisaitl play together, but if they can use McDavid as the 1-2 centers and have some solid wingers to play with them, that'll make that team much more potent. You can still pair them up on a power play. You can still juggle your lines and kind of put them together when, at important moments when you really need a goal to catch up or something in the third period. But for the most part, if you can play them 1-2 in the center ice position with some solid wingers, I think they'll be a much better team overall. So Rieder might just prove to be a very valuable fit here. It's a low-risk contract. It's a 1-year deal, $2 million for a chance to see if he can really be a solid winger for Leon Draisaitl. Now, depending on how things go in Edmonton this year, if it's not looking like they're going to make the playoffs, if they don't improve enough over last year, then that's an easy contract that you can either try to move at the trade deadline, and if you're not able to, well, it's only a 1-year deal anyway, so you're not going to lose anything longer term. And they still have enough other prospects they can squeeze into their lineup. He's not really going to block anybody out, and he's still pretty young, so if it works out, they might be able to get an extension done for him, and keep him longer term here. He may just prove to be a good add here to play with Leon Draisaitl. So we'll see. Not to say that all these contracts are going to work out, but at least I like how they look on paper. I really like how these players project to fit with their new clubs. I really think that they're good contracts, good additions, fair value. Now, I guess time will tell here. Sometimes contract signings like these in free agency look great, and they turn out to be terrible. I mean, if you look back at some of the previous years of free agency, there's always some bad contracts handing out. And like I said, I've already projected which ones I think will be the worst ones, and I'll tell you about who those are in tomorrow's video, so stay tuned for that. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.